The release timing of Night Springs, the first DLC for Alan Wake 2, worked out pretty well for me, considering I just finished the main game a few weeks ago. Night Springs is a collection of 3 relatively short side stories, or alternate realities, that take place across many of the locations featured in the main game, with familiar characters other than Alan and Saga. Each episode is roughly the same length, which I'd say is about an hour or so, given I think I spent about 3 or 4 hours with everything. There are hints of story connections in places, but for the most part these are fun little adventures where you're let loose with a lot of firepower to have a good time, some laughs, and maybe do a little thinking about some of the details. Each episode offers something a little bit different. The first episode takes place in and around Bright Falls, and is focused on Rose, the waitress from the Oh Dear Diner who's been touched in the past by the darkness. It's a good one to start with since it has such a different feel from the main game. Rose begins with a normal day at work, only to end up armed to the teeth and charging into the woods after Alan, who's been taken captive by his slightly less handsome evil twin brother, who also happens to be suffering from lycanthropy following a recent road trip in the Nordic countries. It's quite the setup, and Rose's character floats blissfully through the apparent delusion with a slew of funny quips and a pretty constant layer of blood spatter. This one, of all the episodes, aside from Rose's familiar character, seems the most detached from the central story of the game, and more like a fantasy or daydream. It was also a blast, thanks to a steady stream of enemies and over 300 shotgun shells. Like one of the later episodes, there was a small part I got a bit hung up on early in the episode. An office door in the back of the diner that was previously locked had opened up, and a customer was waiting on Rose to bring him a copy of a book. There's a desk to inspect and a couple of other things, but no clear indication you can click on any of the books present. When you do click one in particular, things will move forward. I just found this a little confusing and was running in circles for a little bit, unsure what I needed to do. The second episode reunites the player with Jesse Faden from Control and her benevolent internal presence, Polaris. It was really cool here to see Jesse's updated model in Alan Wake 2. This is noteworthy since Jesse doesn't appear in the main game, but it's also not surprising, considering we know a Control 2 is in development. Whatever that game will be, the gameplay here is familiar. Unlike Rose, Jesse is armed with a flashlight and Saga's high-capacity handgun, again with hundreds of rounds of ammo and plenty of healing. The locale is a remixed Coffee World amusement park, with a tongue-in-cheek theme of people being corrupted and turned into the shadows that inhabit the area by something in the coffee, a government conspiracy. There are a few memory puzzles here, as well as a coffee-themed numeric riddle to solve to gain entry to the final warehouse location. This sequence seems to take place before Jessie even finds the oldest house, as she alludes to still searching for her brother in the opening sequence. There's no clear indication anything here is something that the Jessie we're familiar with actually experienced, but we also don't know what originally brought Jessie to the front doors of the FBC in Control. Sheriff Breaker appears here, but he and Jessie have never met before, and this seems to be a different Breaker from the one Saga and Alan meet. The third episode has perhaps the strongest and most overt story connections, even if they are still somewhat tenuous. Each episode features opening narration by Warland Dorr, but Dorr also features more heavily in this one as a sort of antagonist, the master of many worlds, who is hunting all copies of the person who looks like Sheriff Tim Breaker across realities. The actor is one such person, who is soon pulled into a different reality by Dorr. This takes you through a few loops in familiar locales like Cauldron Lake and the Ocean View Hotel. He must use an item similar to Alan's lamp, but this one needs to be powered up and used on a TV twice to create a portal. I had a little trouble figuring out this mechanic at first and wasted some time running around looking for something more because I didn't realize you needed to interact with the TV twice to progress. I suppose the portal displaying on the TV screen should have been a clear clue to me. I also wasted some time during the Ocean View Hotel portion, thinking I'd tried the obvious solution to the maze right off the bat. When it didn't work, I was grasping at straws trying to find some other options. Ultimately, it turned out the obvious solution was correct, and I must have just made a mistake following its path somewhere along the way. From here, Things definitely get a bit weird, taking you through a little 2D gameplay sequence and then to a sort of text adventure leading to the end. There were quite a few choices to make in the text sequence, so I wondered if there might be alternate paths or endings, but it sounds like not. Or rather, all paths lead to the same conclusion. I think gameplay-wise, this was perhaps my least favorite. The enemies in the hotel in particular are very dangerous, and you are equipped with the slow reloading revolver. However, you've also got a good number of flashbangs, with no reason not to use them. It's also the most different and the most story relevant. There are definitely hints of Quantum Break, none more overt than when the actor, who looks like Jack Joyce, meets the agent, aka Jesse Faden, who also looks like Beth Wilder, given both of these actors also played those alternate roles in that game. Even though they don't know each other, there's a sense that they do, an echo from another reality. There's also some indication that Alan, Scratch, and Thomas Zane are all instances from different realities, or maybe times, of the same person. We generally already knew this, although I'm still murky on the details around Zane. Door is described as the pursuer and the destroyer of worlds, maybe in an attempt to benefit his reality, and maintain exclusively the power he has to move between dimensions, something the actor also seems to be a natural at, and that perhaps poses a threat to Door. The ending, like all of the episodes, is a little bit abrupt. Something that each episode shares, and that they all sort of converge to in the end, is Alan, who, like Door, is also characterized as the master of many worlds. As I kind of expected, there isn't a great deal to cover here. I had fun with the DLC. It was a good opportunity to blast some enemies and let the story take me in whatever strange directions it was headed. I hope that the final DLC will make it to us this year. I think that's likely, maybe around the anniversary of the game's release date. I think the deluxe upgrade for the game, which looked to be the only way to acquire the DLC, is $20 here in the US. I think $10 for Night Springs is about the highest cost I'd consider reasonable for what's on offer here. But of course that's highly subjective. There are some bits and pieces, maybe for the larger Remedyverse picture, and I think anyone invested in the main game will want to check this out, even if it can also likely be safely skipped. This is finally going to bring Alan Wake 2 to a close, at least for a while. As I said, I'll certainly be keeping an eye out for the final DLC, but I also look forward to getting started on some other things. Thank you again as always. Say hi down in the comments if you have some insights to share on Alan Wake or anything Remedy. And until next time, take care.